On December 11th, 1964, Sam Cooke was shot and killed at a motel in Los Angeles. He was 33 years old. Within 48 hours, radio stations across the country began pulling Bobby Womack's records off the air. Nobody announced a boycott. Nobody put it in writing. It just happened. The way certain decisions happen in small communities when the community has made up its mind. What Bobby Womack had done was not a crime. It was something the music world could not absorb, and it would cost him 3 years. Jerome Barnes was 26 years old and had been playing session guitar in Los Angeles for 3 years when he first heard that Bobby Womack was coming back. It was the spring of 1968. Jerome had heard about Bobby, had heard about the records, the talent, the situation that had removed him from regular rotation, and he had formed the opinion that what had happened to Bobby Womack was an injustice that was also, in the specific logic of the music world, completely comprehensible. He was going to play the session and see who walked through the door. Robert Dwayne Womack was born on March 4, 1944 in Cleveland, Ohio, the third of 5 brothers, all of whom sang, all of whom were trained by their father, Friendly Womack Sr., in the gospel music of the Black Church. The Womack brothers performed the gospel circuit across the Midwest from the late 1952 onward, and they were good enough at it that the circuit eventually brought them to the attention of Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke heard them in 1960. He signed them to his SAR Records label and became their mentor, their sponsor, and the person most responsible for their understanding of how the secular music world worked, its economics, its relationships, its specific demands. Bobby, the most musically gifted of the brothers, developed a particular closeness with Sam. He played guitar. He wrote songs. He absorbed everything Sam was willing to teach, which was considerable, because Sam Cooke's understanding of the music business was among the most sophisticated of any artist of his generation. The Rolling Stones recorded "It's All Over Now" in 1964, a song Bobby Womack had written. The Stones version went to #1 in the UK. Bobby was 20 years old. He had written a #1 record on the other side of the Atlantic before he had a proper solo career in America. Sam was proud of him. The relationship between them was the specific relationship of a young man of exceptional talent and an older artist of exceptional generosity. The kind of mentorship that shapes not just what a person does, but who they understand themselves to be. Then Sam Cooke was killed at the Hacienda Motel on December 11, 1964. He was 33 years old. The music world processed the loss the way it processes great losses, with tributes and eulogies and the specific grief of people who understand that something irreplaceable has been removed from the world. Bobby Womack was 20 years old. He had lost his mentor, his label chief, his guide through a world he was just beginning to understand. 4 months later, in April of 1965, Bobby Womack married Barbara Campbell, Sam Cooke's widow. The music world responded with the specific ferocity of a community that has decided on a verdict without a trial. The reasoning, as it circulated, had several components. It was too soon. Barbara was Sam's widow. Bobby had been like a son to Sam. The marriage was a betrayal of the most intimate kind. None of this reasoning was expressed in any official form. It was expressed through radio airplay, through booking decisions, through the choices made by producers and label executives who decided, one by one, that Bobby Womack was not someone they wanted to work with right now. His records disappeared from the radio. Venues stopped booking him. The phone calls that should have been coming from the industry did not come. He was 21 years old and had been informally exiled from the career he had been building. Jerome Barnes had heard all of this in the way musicians hear things, through the session circuit, through conversations at studios and at showcases, through the specific network of people who do the work and know who is and isn't working. He had his own opinions about what had happened. He kept those opinions mostly to himself. The call for the 1968 session came through the normal channels. A producer he worked with regularly needed a guitarist for a Bobby Womack session at a studio on Sunset Boulevard. Jerome said yes. He arrived at the studio at 2 in the afternoon. The room was set up. Other session players were there, bass, drums, keys, the standard configuration for a recording session of that kind. The vibe in the room was the specific vibe of a session that everyone present knows is not entirely ordinary. More attention than usual, less casual conversation, people keeping their eyes on the door. Bobby Womack walked in at 2:15. He was 24 years old. He was lean, leaner than the photographs Jerome had seen, the specific leanness of 3 years of reduced income and reduced profile. He was wearing a plain dark jacket and carrying a guitar case. He set the case on a chair, opened it, took out a guitar. He checked the tuning without amplifying it. He ran a chord progression quietly. Then he looked up. He said to the room, "I know what some of you have heard. I'm not here to explain anything. I'm here to work." Then he plugged in. Jerome said many years later that what happened in that room in the next 3 hours was one of the most concentrated demonstrations of musicianship he had witnessed in a career that contained a great many demonstrations of musicianship. Bobby Womack played guitar with the specific quality of a person who has been away from the thing they do best for 3 years and is now doing it again, and every note is carrying the weight of that absence. Not performing absence, not displaying it. Working through it, one take at a time, each take more precise than the last, the guitar doing what the guitar had always done under his hands, but with an added layer of something that the other players in the room could feel without naming it. The session produced 3 tracks. The producer said at the end of it that it was some of the cleanest guitar work he had recorded in several years. He did not say this to Bobby directly, said it later to Jerome in the parking lot. Jerome nodded. Bobby Womack's solo career resumed after 1968. He recorded prolifically through the late 1960 seconds and 1970 seconds. That's the Way I Feel About You in 1975. Looking for a Love in 1974. He co-wrote songs that other artists made into hits. He developed a reputation in the industry as a guitarist of exceptional ability, the kind of player that other players talked about with the specific admiration that musicians reserve for ability that exceeds what the audience typically hears. He experienced a major commercial resurgence in 1981 with If You Think You're Lonely Now and That's the Way I Feel About You, which introduced him to a new generation of listeners. He collaborated with Wilton Felder, with Stevie Wonder, with the Rolling Stones, who credited him always as the writer of the song they had recorded when he was 20 years old. He died on June 27, 2014, in Tarzana, California. He was 70 years old. He had been performing and recording until near the end of his life, with the consistency of a person who has decided that the work is what the work is, and the circumstances around it are not its definition. Jerome Barnes played sessions in Los Angeles until 1991. He played on hundreds of records, records that charted and records that didn't, sessions that produced something lasting and sessions that produced nothing in particular.
He said the 1968 Bobby Womack session was the one he thought about when people asked him what the work had meant to him. He said, "You learn something in session work about who can play and who is playing. Most people can play. Some people are playing, really playing, bringing everything, not holding anything back for the next take." Bobby walked in that afternoon, and from the first chord he played, he was in the second category. You could hear 3 years in it. You could hear everything that had happened and everything he had been told and every door that had been closed, all of it going through the guitar. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. Like a man who has been waiting to do the thing he does and has finally been given permission. Not the Rolling Stones record. Not the Grammy nominations. The parking lot on Sunset Boulevard on a spring afternoon in 1968, where a session musician stood for a moment before getting in his car and thought, "Whatever happened to that man? He is back, and the music is better for the having survived it." Bobby Womack walked into that room in 1968 with nothing but the guitar and 3 years of being told he didn't belong. He plugged in. He played. He gave every take everything. And what came out was clean. Subscribe to Untold Soul Legends. Every week we find the moments behind the music that changed everything. The comment section is open. Tell us which soul legend story you want to hear next. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needed to hear it today.